Hello and welcome on this late summer's Tuesday to Goldster Conversation. And my goodness, what a story we have for you today. This show, Purpose, Passion and Grit, is about courage, resolve, determination, about overcoming life's obstacles and helping others climb what could be seemingly unassailable mountains. My guest today has done all of that many times over. He was born in Bridgetown, Barbados in 1978, and as a boy, seeing the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace, he was determined to join the army. He succeeded and became a member of the Household Cavalry and was the first Barbadian to ride in the Trooping of the Colour. That's the Queen's birthday parade. In 2008, he was posted to Afghanistan. His vehicle was blown up by a roadside bomb, and amid a myriad of other injuries, he lost both legs. Yet 3 years later, he was representing Britain as a para-athlete, first in volleyball and then as now in bobsleigh. What an astonishing story. Let's hear it from the man himself. Welcome, Corrie Mapp, to Goldster, Purpose, Passion and Grit. Great to have you, Corrie.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. It's
to be here.
And now behind you, I can see a cabinet and a framed thing of what looks like medals hanging on it. What are we looking at behind you in your room there?
A collection of World Cup trophies, volleyball medals, bobsleigh medals from the past maybe 10, 12 years or so.
Okay. And on what I'm seeing on my right, are those your military medals there?
On the right, no. Those are all bobsleigh medals as well.
Oh, they're sporting medals, are they?
Yeah, all sporting medals.
Okay. And you have on a black t-shirt of which I can just see the word Bridgetown. That is your hometown, is it, Bridgetown?
Yeah, correct.
And give us an idea of your childhood growing up in Barbados.
My childhood was a very good one. I had a very, very laid back, very easygoing childhood. I grew up in a neighborhood called Clifton Hall, St. John, and it's pretty much plantation land, the place where I grew up. So it's called Clifton Hall Tenantry. So the tenantry itself was built on Clifton Hall plantation land. Clifton Hall plantation land employees would live in that general area. And that's where the people would do most of the farming, the sugarcane planting and harvesting, yams, sweet potatoes, eddos, all those different things were grown in that area. Very industrious, hardworking area, but also very, very family oriented. Fantastic place to grow up, very, very close to the sea. So I had a lot of fun growing up, running down to the beach, roasting breadfruits and different things, getting involved in mischief like any other kid.
Yeah. And then
yeah, it was
and your
fantastic.
parents were working on the plantation, is that right?
No, my mom worked in school meal service.
Uh-huh.
And she, yeah, basically it's like the school lady here, they call this school lady, the
Oh,
lunch lady.
okay,
Yeah.
yes.
So she was the Barbados version of that.
Yeah.
But there's an entire organization that provides lunches for the whole country for $1 a week. And she was a part of that. And my dad was a carpenter.
Carpenter. Okay. And did you have a big family, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, large family, mostly women. I have four sisters, four all older sisters.
Yeah.
I came along very, very late in the journey.
Mm.
My youngest sister is 14 years older than me, so I am pretty much the baby in the family.
Oh, okay. And as
Yeah,
the baby in the family, as a kid, you saw the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace and all that sort of thing.
yeah.
You told me that story, but tell us again what happened, how that changed your life.
So I came to England in 1985 to visit my uncle, Fitz in Derby, and he took us down to London to visit to do a bit of sightseeing or whatever the case might be. And essentially he took us to Buckingham Palace, and I got to see the changing of the guard on that particular day. It was the Grenadier Guards.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, whoa, I love that, and I really want to be. That's something that I would love to do. Um, but my sister reminded me of it as I was growing up, and it's something that never left me. And then especially when I got into secondary school, um, I got into a bit of trouble on the first day, I think, and they the head cadet master took me under his wing at the time, and I fell in love with it all over again through reading the drill pamphlets, the different pamphlets that you get for teaching skill at arms and drill and map reading, all these different things. You would see figurines of or pictures of different guardsmen. There would always be guardsmen, so I was just like always fascinated with them.
So, and you were living in Barbados at the time.
I was, so yeah.
So for a Barbados child, young guy wanting to join the British Army, that's a huge leap, isn't it?
It is a big leap because at the time you don't know how you would do it, and you don't know of many. I don't know of many other Barbadians than myself that have actually done it. I know one or two, but not many. So it was always something kind of a far-fetched dream for us kids.
What did
But
you do? Did you write a letter and put a stamp on it and post it, or you make a phone
oh
call?
no. No, at the time, to be completely honest, I thought it was out of reach for us kids at the time. So I never really focused on it. I never really thought too much about it going through school and whatever else. I knew that if you did well enough, the army would take you in as a officer cadet, and then they would send you to Sandhurst to train, and then you would have to come back to the Barbados Defence Force. But that was the extent of my knowledge in terms of British
Have had. So did you? Because at the time when you left school, you joined the Barbados Defence Force or police, didn't you?
Yeah, when I actually when I left school, I went to an organization called the Barbados Youth Service. Initially, when I was going through school, I wanted to be a commercial pilot.
Okay.
That was what I was working towards. And there was a point when I kind of explained, like when you have the careers times and you explain to the teachers what you want to be, and you get funneled along that kind of
Mhm.
road. Well, at the time I told the lady that I wanted to be a commercial pilot, and I was good at art, but I was also pretty decent at the sciences and the maths and stuff. And she said, "Oh, your mom doesn't have enough money to for you to become a commercial pilot. So I'm just gonna put you in an art class because you're good at art." So I'm like, so I thought at that point, I thought, well, I'm not doing any more work. So I kind of just focused on cadets and
Okay. Yeah.
track and field at the time,
Yeah.
and never left school with any kind of qualifications. So after that, my mom put me in this organization called the Barbados Youth Service, which is for kids without direction.
Kids without direction.
Yes.
My goodness, but you've shown that you've got more than. But your direction was to get to guard the Queen at Buckingham Palace, wasn't it?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But and you made it. So did you do that through the Barbados Army or police, or did you do it directly with the British Army?
I did it through sheer will and perseverance and um cheekiness. So what happened was I used to go on the internet was just coming up all the time. And I used to go on the internet and watch Virgin Atlantic. I love the 747-400s or the 747 fleet. So I would just go and watch. There was this one particular video called Early Morning Landing, and it would take you through flying over the countryside of um into Gatwick.
Right.
I would just feel like, oh,
Yeah.
I need that in my life.
Yeah.
And through that, there was an advertisement that came up, but joining the British Army Commonwealth soldiers. So I thought, oh, Commonwealth soldiers, and I thought, okay. So I went onto it, and I realized I could join the Marines. And at that time, I was in the Royal Barbados Police Force.
Right.
So I took leave from the police, myself and another friend, and we hopped on a plane and came here, did the Royal Marine selection, and got in. And I think it was maybe 2, 3 weeks before I was meant to start basic training, my dad died.
Mhm.
He was never a fan of the military. Yeah, but he died, and I just thought, oh, I can't leave now because my mum, I can't. I'm the only boy, and my mum, I can't leave my mum.
Mhm.
So I stayed for another year or so, and then I thought, nah, I can't do this. And I went to the British High Commission in Barbados and spoke to a gentleman who happened to be serving in the Household Cavalry. And he showed me videos of tanks going across the prairie in Canada, and I thought, oh, I need this. So I asked him, how do I do this? And he gave me all the details and stuff. And a year later, or a couple of months later, I was in Darby's careers office.
Goodness. And did you household cavalry that you were doing was very disciplined riding of horses, wasn't it? So had you done any of that, or did you learn from scratch?
I had never been near a horse at that point. I essentially used to see them in the police because they had a mounted division, but I never went near them because we always considered them to be lunatics. Um, but I got to Purbright, ATR Purbright, and we were coming to the end of our basic training, and I was expecting to go um to Bovington, which is down in Poole, Dorset area,
Mm.
Lulworth. And they said, yeah, you're all gonna be going to Knightsbridge. So I'm like, Knightsbridge? Yeah, you're gonna go ride horses first. I'm like, no chance. I don't want to do this. So the guy's like, you're gonna do it or you just go home. So I thought, okay. I come too far now. So
And,
um
you wanted to drive a tank, right? And
yeah,
they
that's
wanted
all
you
I
to
wanted to
drive a
do. Yeah.
horse. Okay. Denise, in our audience here, asked, did your friend take up the selection offer, the one that you had to turn down?
No, he's actually in either Cayman Islands or Bermuda as a police officer now.
Oh, so he didn't go either. No, oh, that's so good.
We
But
wanted to go together.
so when you arrived in Knightsbridge, and anybody who knows London, you drive through Hyde Park, and on your right, if you're going to Hyde Park Corner, is a military barracks with a mini skyscraper, and that's where the horses come out. You lived
Correct.
there, did you? For
I didn't actually I lived there. I lived a bit when I was training, but fortunate for me, I was married and I got to live in Victoria away from the barracks, so that was pretty
okay,
cool.
okay.
They had service family accommodation in Victoria.
And
But yeah, it
did you
was
find
cool.
it easy to ride a horse?
No, no, not at all. I don't know if you have you ever seen the Queen's Cavalry?
Yeah, oh yes.
Right. Well,
Very, very disciplined. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
but that was you, wasn't it? That's what you became.
that pretty much. Yeah. Shock to the system. But it was wonderful. It was at the time at the time you're going through something, you're suffering or you are finding it hard, difficult, whatever. But you can never you can look back on it and you will see at that point that it was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life.
Mm.
One of the best experiences of my life. It's something like you will never like the camaraderie, the whole ethos of the place, the pride, the pageantry. I mean, nobody does ceremonial like the British, let's be honest.
And
So,
I mean, not only did you have to learn to ride a horse, you know, in time and everything, you also dressed up. You dress up in very fancy regalia, don't you?
correct. Yeah.
Uh,
It's a whole process. So you learn first you learn how to ride without a saddle, just on bareback.
yeah,
Then you learn on a blanket. Then you move from the blanket to a military saddle, and you have to polish these. You're not allowed to use your stirrups when you're getting on. You have to jump on from the ground. It's a whole process, and then you have to jump, say your name, number, rank, and name with your hands on your head. Um, it teaches you how to be confident on it because and you don't understand why at the time, but when you're riding through central London and the horses get spooked, you can't be um unprepared for that.
yeah. I mean,
So
so
you know what it's like to fall off, you know what it's like to deal with adversity on a horse.
just go over that again. You have to put your hands on your head, jump onto the horse from the ground whilst you're reciting your name, rank, and serial
No,
number.
not jump onto the horse. So like you're in the riding school, you queue up and
Yeah.
you have two jumps to go over. I think it's two jumps. And while you're going over the jumps, you're not allowed to hold the
Oh, I see. I
reins.
see.
You
Yeah.
have to your hands have to be on your head, and you have to say, "I am 2521320, Trooper Mapp, sir," while you're
Goodness.
going over the jumps. So imagine doing that, and the horses bucking and
Yeah.
doing whatever they are, because they pretty much can do whatever they want at that point.
Good grief.
Um,
And Celia says that those horses are huge. I think I would have preferred a tank. Is it, is it,
they're huge. They're
is it
big.
easier to control a tank than a horse?
Um, yes.
Yes, it is. A tank or an armored vehicle is easier. But Celia adds, it is a wonderful sight when they all ride out for the changing of the guard. So when you did that the first time,
Mm.
uh, uh, not practicing anymore, it's for real. How did you feel?
As I said before, it's kind of for me it was surreal because it's something we would watch on TV. Like you would see the British Airways ad in the 80s or 90s, and you would see all the pride and pageantry of the guards and riding next to the Queen and all this in the carriage. And I remember watching the thing that brought my mind back to that was Princess Diana's funeral.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that was quite a surreal moment from most people. Even if it affected people even in Barbados, to be honest.
That was household cavalry, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah,
And the Queen's funeral as well, wasn't it?
correct.
Pulling the gun carriage.
No, that the I think the gun carriage was pulled by
Oh, it's pulled by the
the
Navy,
Navy.
wasn't it? Yes, and you did the trooping of the color too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Was that nerve-wracking?
No, it's long. It's very long. But what I can say is there's feeling, no more feeling of pride that you will get riding through the ceremonial gate,
Yeah,
knowing you got 300 horses on parade, knowing that you were going to escort Her Majesty the Queen. And every man wanted to do his job and do it to the highest possible level. So to be a part of that, and I mean, for my mum at the time, as I said, I was living in Victoria, so they could walk to see me. And I remember on the first escort, we escorted the Prime Minister or President of Ghana. I remember sitting in front of the Queen and this gentleman and the water running down my face because I was the only Barbadian ever to do it. I could see my mum, and it was very emotional for us as a
yes.
uh,
And your sisters and all, did they email you in a flurry saying that
yeah,
your hair
yeah.
was out of place or your uniform was untucked?
No, 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 no. No, they never. They were just everyone was immensely proud of it.
Yeah.
I think I remember many days I would be sat. I don't know if you know in horse guards you see the horses in the boxes.
Mm.
I remember I would on many days I would just out of the corner of my eye I would see this lady just standing there looking at me, and I would just manage to turn my head enough to realize it's my mum, and um, ooh, it's emotional, but just to see the pride on her face at that time, I know that all she had gone through for me,
Yeah.
personally, and my sisters, it was it's quite a big deal.
Yeah. And she came to see you, and
She would walk from Victoria and
and
just to
then
stand there and look
you
at me.
were at this time. There were your colleagues in the army were in Iraq and in Afghanistan,
Mhm.
which is where you shortly after that ended up.
Yes.
How did that posting happen?
So I served my time um in Knightsbridge about 2 years or so. And they asked me what I wanted to do next in my career, and I said I just wanted to go to the armored regiment. Um and yeah, I got posted to when I went and did the driving course and the crew management course for the vehicles, the tanks, eventually. And yeah, just got posted to Windsor, and we began pre-deployment training from there.
So I have to ask you the same question I asked you about the horses. Had you ever got inside an armored vehicle or a tank before you started this training?
No, I had never seen one
No,
ever
not at all. So
on
so you
TV
were learning from scratch again.
from scratch again.
Incredible. Um, and you went out there. Whereabouts were you in Afghanistan?
I was in a place called Musikala, which is northern Helmand,
Yeah,
and Musikala district center.
that was one of the most dangerous places, wasn't it?
I don't, man, all of it was dangerous. All of it was pretty tricky at times. I mean, it depends on what was happening in the area. We were most northernmost, so it was quite difficult. It was quite a difficult area to be in.
And were you? I mean, they had the very big base there, but were you in a small base, sort of in the middle of nowhere?
Not in the middle of nowhere, no. We were in a district center, so there was a bazaar outside of the compound that we were in. Um, and there were villages, there were houses just above it. I remember one day being in the tank park and feeling this whack like right above my eye, and it was a kid that whacked me in the head with a rock from just standing on the hill, um,
Oh my
just
goodness!
above. So it was pretty close to the villages. It was
Yeah. And how many of you were in the compound?
it's a good question.
Hmm?
300 and some.
About 100. And were you going out every day on patrol and risking your lives?
We would go out most days. There were days that you had some downtime to admin yourself or whatever the case might be. Some days that you would be what we would call a QRF, quick
Hmm.
reaction force, for if anything happened on the ground and any team in the district needed a backup.
Yeah.
But most days we would just go out.
And how long had you been there before you got blown up?
Um, I got there in October and I got blown up on January the 31st.
And
Um,
tell us about that day, of what you can remember of it.
so we had established so a little to background to this is that we were trying to push the FLET, which is the forward line of enemy troops, as far north as possible at the time. And we had established a patrol base called PB Habib. So it was above a village. And when we first got to this village, there was literally nothing. Like no one was walking around. There was no one moving around the streets or anything. And we were based with the Royal Anglian Vikings at the time. And we within a 2 day period of time, we saw kids running around in the streets again. We saw farmers coming out and beginning to farm, and people selling bread next to the road, bread, vegetables, all this kind of stuff, which was really that's what it is about. That's what it was about for us, liberating people from tyranny. Um, and even if it was just for 5 minutes, we were able to do that for them, which made me proud. So on that particular day, I was supporting the Royal Anglian Vikings, and we went out and we were advancing along this road. It was a road that we observed for weeks, and we thought, oh, no one's going down that road. Wonder why. So then it was established that there might be IEDs on that road, which would be hidden explosives. And so we had to be really anytime we were gonna go down there, we would have to be really careful. So on the day that I went down there, I was following what we would call a mastiff, which is a kind of a six-wheeled troop carrying vehicle, which was very, very safe. It's probably our safest vehicle, along with I think the Fox and there's another one. But because of the V-shaped hull, it deflects the explosion away from the vehicle. So that was leading, and I was in a CVRT Scimitar, which is a kind of a reconnaissance tank that our regiment uses or used at the time. And we came over the radio that one of the sergeants from the Anglians, who was embedded with the Afghan army, had been injured, and they wanted to move him and establish an HLS because the Chinook helicopter was on the way in. And they asked us as a vehicle to go on top of the hill and be a recce screen and kind of draw the Taliban, which had them pinned down at the time. So the last thing I remember is asking my crew commander if he wanted me to lower my seat so that he could traverse the gun. And he said no. And that's the last thing I remembered. The next thing I remembered was waking up 2 weeks later.
Or 2 weeks later, where? In Britain or?
In Selly Oak Hospital in Britain.
Goodness. And so it was a sort of normal day's patrol, as it were, a normal day out on patrol, and suddenly you wake up in Britain. And when you woke, what did you see? Who did you speak to?
I spoke to a nurse. There was a nurse, like kind of doing her rounds or whatever the case might be. And it was kind of a strange experience for me because I found it difficult to speak. And later on, I found out that my jaw was broken. So I remember finding it difficult to speak. I remember being covered and asking her to take my boots off, which was, like a lot of people would ask, but why are you asking them to take your boots off? But at the time, your head is so scrambled, you have no concept or no idea of anything. In your head, you're hearing vehicles on the parade square moving around. My head was a mess. And I remember asking her, can you please take my boots off? And I remember her becoming very emotional and going out of the room. And my mom, my wife, my sister, and the consultant came in at the time. And they then broke the news of what had happened and told me that I had lost both my legs below the knee. And then they told me about my other injuries as well. So it was a lot to take in that day.
Yes. So you were feeling your legs and you wanted as if
Pretty
they
much.
were heavy with the boots when they did not exist anymore
Correct.
as part of your body.
Mhm.
Um, you said a lot to take in that day, but give us an idea of how you managed to process exactly what had happened.
Um, I spent the next couple of days kind of talking to my sisters and talking to my wife and different people and the welfare officers and stuff and trying to make sense of stuff. And then they had a book when that they gave us as well. So from the time you get injured and you got back to Camp Bastion and you go into the hospital, everyone that comes to visit you writes in this book and tells you, you know, kind of what condition you were in, wish you well, all this kind of stuff, and this is what happened, you know, that kind of stuff. So that kind of catches you up to where you are in the hospital. And I just remember reading that and thinking, oh my God. And I remember writing a couple of weeks before that in a guy called Richard Ward's book and making we like he was laughing with us though. And I remember we were just laughing because they had leeches on him and different things and whatever else. Um, and he took it amazingly well. I was like, dude, I don't want anything to do with that.
And are you in a ward? Were you in a ward with people that had suffered similar
Yes.
injuries? So was there a sort of, there was a camaraderie, but was it an uplifting one or a dreadful one or?
I, at the point that you're speaking about, I was still in ICU. I stayed in ICU for a couple of days and then
Right.
moved out.
Yeah.
And kind of had to I believe I stayed in ICU because I had a punctured lung. I had um, blood poisoning because of something or the other. Um, I had a few injuries that were quite tricky. So at the time, they kept me there for a while. And one of the captains that was a part of the regiment I was with, the Vikings, he came in and he died. So I kind of stayed with him up until he died, and then I kind of left there after that. That part was difficult for me as well. But what really turned things around for me, there was a couple of days when the physio came in and said, you know, do you want to start like moving and doing things? And I was kind of angry. I got angry at that point and just didn't want anything to do with it. And my time came for me to get my first bath after after this whole thing. And I went into the shower and the nurse took me into the shower. She asked me if I needed help and so on. And um she left me and I turned the pipe on and the water just hit me and it was wonderful at the first. And I remember closing my eyes and opening my eyes and then just seeing like everything was red on the floor and it was just like, oh my God. And then I started like washing myself and washing my hair, and my hair started coming out in my hands and stuff. And I just thought, at that point, I just broke. That's the thing that I didn't break before that. I just completely broke at that point. And I think I cried so hard that the lady heard me outside the door and she unlocked the door and she came in and she put her arms around me. You know, she was getting so, and she put her arms around me and she said, "We're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay, and we're gonna get through this." And at that point, I thought, yeah, yeah, okay. So we finished showering and whatnot, and she put me back to bed. And I found the rest of that day to be quite quiet in my head. And then I also saw my daughters that day, and my middle daughter Jodie, she was the first one. She's bouncing off every wall. Even at 18 years old, she's just a ball of energy. And she came in at the time and she said, "Daddy, you know what? you're gonna get some metal legs. You know that you're gonna get some metal legs, and you're gonna be able to teach me how to ride my bicycle still. You know, and I thought to myself at that point, like, if she doesn't see me as anything different, why should I sit here and feel sorry for myself? Like, I want to be an active part of their life. And
So that turned you around. You hit the despair, as it
I
were, but
hit the
then,
absolute rock bottom that morning. And then
yeah.
I got up that
And
evening and decided that I was going to move forward with my life
if if
because of that.
if your daughter saw the uplifting element that helped you out of it, what would you say was dragging you down? I mean, obviously, what had happened, were there people that were dragging you down, or was it just
Oh,
a natural?
no, I think it was the process of grief. I think it's grief. Like, people think you only grieve when you lose someone, physically lose a family member, a friend, or a dog, or whatever the case might be. But you grieve for many different reasons. I found out you grieve for the loss of a job you love, loss of your limbs, loss of passion for something that you grieve for so many different reasons. And this is something that I figured out over time. And I figured, like, for me, that was understanding I'm grieving and understanding that this is going to be hard and it's going to be a difficult road to walk, but I'm not alone. And my regiment was a big part of that, because people always ask, "Oh, are you well supported by the British Armed Forces?" It's not necessarily British Armed Forces; it's the people that you work with. And our regiment, the Household Cavalry, in itself is a very family-oriented kind of regiment. It's very small, so it's everyone knows everyone, and everyone supports everyone, and keeps everyone going forward. It's not a bed of roses by any stretch. You do have your difficult moments, but it is a place where you know that if if something goes wrong, people are gonna have your back. And at that point, they showed me that they had mine, which made it easy. And then my family, I mean, within 48 hours, plans were made, and my family were here from Barbados. And I'm talking about my mom, my sister, two of my sisters, my mother-in-law.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
mom, sisters, and two sisters and mother-in-law flown out here at the regiment's expense, not the British government's, at the
yeah,
regiment's expense. So, like, you can't ask for more support than that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you had the support from the regiment and great support from the family, and then you found the sport.
Oh yeah.
But when you were wanting to be in the British Army or all those things as a kid, did you ever think you would be an international athlete?
No. Oh no.
So that
Um,
was like learning to ride a horse again, was it?
yes. No, well, not really. I was a jack of all trades and a master of none where sport is concerned.
A
I,
master of none. You've got all those medals behind you, Corrie. You've got to be
yeah,
a master of some of them.
post injury. Um, yeah, it's kind of a situation where I played cricket at school. Like, I went to school with West Indies cricketers, like Tino Best, Dwayne Smith. Um, and I played junior cricket with a lot of them around that time. Um, but I also ran. I played volleyball and that kind of stuff. I played volleyball for the army before I was injured. So I was a sporty person, but I wasn't like an elite athlete sporty person. Um, so when I got to Headley Court, which is in Surrey, which is where we were rehabbing at the time.
That's the military rehabilitation center, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they they pretty much, they let us know, right, you're not victims. That was the first thing that they told us. Like, you are not victims. You are still strong, you're still robust men, you still have a life ahead of you. Right? You can choose to get up and live, or you can choose to let this define you or define the person that you become. Um, and a large percentage of us, obviously, we've had our um, few that we've lost along the way to suicide and other injuries and different things, but a large percentage of us have gone on to do weird and wonderful things throughout the world. So it's something that I think our rehab facility is something fantastic and
Yeah.
unrivaled, I believe.
And was it? I mean, was it you that thought as you were going through your rehabilitation process, sport is the thing I want to do, or did you meet people that were guided you into this area?
Yeah, I had guidance, I would have to say. There was this program called Battle Back, and Battle Back was designed to um, help us kind of reestablish who we want to be, like even just living day-to-day lives. So for
Okay.
me, that was like I told them I want to drive a manual car again.
Yeah.
So this little lady in a Fiesta rocked up outside of the gym one morning. She's like, "Hi, Corey. I'm here to teach you how to drive."
Yeah.
And she took me driving around Epsom and different places, and we established, okay, yeah, a double amputee can drive a stick shift still.
Yeah.
Um, so there's stuff like that that we rebuilt our lives brick by brick by brick. Um, and at that point, I was offered the opportunity to play volleyball because
Yeah.
someone figured out that I played for the army, and um, then as a result of that, I was invited to a trial for Great Britain because we were in the lead up to the 2012 Olympics at the time, and but I hit a wall at that point because I thought, oh, um, that's we did pre-deployment training. I went straight on tour and then straight into rehab. All
Right.
this time I'm away from kids, family, everybody.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to commit to something that is going to take me away from my kids even
Yeah.
more? So I hit the wall there and I thought, oh, I'm not ready for it. So I gave up on volleyball at that time and focused on family for a bit and then made the team for the European Championships the year after the
Yeah.
2012 Olympics.
So
Um,
it sounds as if you were very sensible in a way, that you understood the psychological triggers that you were going through. You said you hit a wall, you needed to downtime with the family instead of pushing yourself too hard.
yeah, yeah, I think it's very, you have to be sensible about, you have to acknowledge when things aren't right. I think a lot
Mm.
of people will feel or know that something is wrong and ignore that feeling.
Mm.
And for me, I've always been told to kind of, okay, you have a gut feeling that something's wrong, explore that feeling. Why is it wrong? What's wrong? What are you doing? What is happening around you right now that's giving you this feeling of discomfort or
Mhm.
whatever it is you're feeling? And for me, I've always done that. And I spoke to my sisters, and my sisters are and my mom are very wise people.
Yes.
Um, and they would always say to me, they would go through a kind of a checklist with me, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah.
And at the end of it, we'd say, well, there your answer is.
Yeah.
My wife is also very wise,
Yeah.
wise
So
person. So,
a family checklist, very important for you at this stage. But then you did return
mhm.
and you became a British champion and world champion in the bobsleigh. Tell us what happened there.
So part and parcel of the whole rehab process was the sport, and basically as a double amputee you have to go through a lot of balance work and different things when you're learning to walk again. So it only so I came out of I spent I think it was 4 weeks in Headley Court, and the fifth week when I got to sorry into in 4 weeks in the hospital, and then I came out, went to Headley Court, and in that week, that first week, I was walking. So it was fast. Like it happened, everything happened really quickly after my daughter. I started doing push-ups. I started going into the gym. I started doing all these things the following days. And everything moved really quickly. So when we got to Headley Court, I learned to play golf. I started playing cricket again, traveled to Uganda to play cricket. Um, and all these things established the fact that I had good hand-eye coordination. So there was one time I was playing a volleyball tournament, and the head of sports recovery for Healthy Heroes at the time came to me and said, we've got a new sport for you to try. So I said, oh no, what now? And he said, we're gonna try bobsleigh. So I said, bobsleigh. I said, no, I'm broken enough already as it is. So he kind of smiled and said, no, you'll be fine. You'll be all right. So I batted it off at first, but then I said, oh, okay. So then I ended up in Calgary, at this historic track, the place where the Cool Runnings movie was made. And I thought to myself, well, you're here, just give it your all. And what we walked the track from top to bottom. And then before you knew it, I was in a two-man sled being pushed off. And that. I was hooked.
That was it. And then you became the world champion, the British champion, British
Yeah, I
world
think
champion. Yeah.
I won the first ever official race. And then in 2018, I became the World Cup champion.
So I just have to, because you did the volleyball, you did this, and you're an international athlete. Do you ever think back to that thing that your daughter said, is that you're going to get a better pair of legs? Did you ever think that, yeah, maybe she was right?
Um, you know, as a father, I feel like I failed in some ways. So yes, I do. The bottom line is yes, I did get to go back and do things with them, but I could have done so much more. But I spent time. I can't do anything halfway.
Mm,
So volleyball, I was all in. Bobsleigh, I'm all in.
yeah,
And I'm focused on that. And I kind of missed bits of their life that I would like to go back now and take again. But
yeah.
they understood, and they say they're proud. So I want to believe them. Um, but it's one of those situations where I there's just things that I would like to go back and do better or differently.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yes, that's a bit of the perfectionist about you, Corrie, is there?
uh, I wouldn't say a perfectionist, but I just I'm a thinking man. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's um. You did a book, and I've just put in the chat for our audience the book called Black Ice,
Yeah.
that you sort of co-wrote with somebody you had never met.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's a great book because it describes the story that we've got there. So just tell us briefly about that.
So Black Ice is about my story from Barbados, from childhood growing up in
Mm.
Barbados to up until this point. It's a story about triumph over adversity. You hear the whole stories about what life was like as a police officer in Barbados, what life was like when I left school without any certificates. It's a story that tells you, in life, essentially, you are going to hit bumps in the road, but it is up to you to have the character not to let it define the person you become, or let it, whatever you hit, you know,
And
you
and
can't
and
let it
and
define the person you
and
become.
and the black ice, this is the dangers that you don't see on the road, or is it the bobsleigh ice that you skim down?
Black Ice is my nickname in bobsleigh.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
There's no weird and wonderful meaning behind it. It's just the name that they gave me in bobsleigh. And we thought, oh, that would be a cool name for the book. And that was the thought process behind it.
There's a question from Denise here. Do you think your horse riding training helped with your balance when you started bobsleighing?
I'm gonna say no. Horse riding is a very, very unique experience. Bobsleigh, you're strapped in very tightly. It's like kind of like F1 driving on ice.
Yeah.
Um,
So there's all these different things that you've learned with the horse riding, the driving the tank and the armored vehicle, the volleyball and the bobsleighing. Sue Townley asks, are you still horse riding?
from time to time, I go hiking with friends. I go hiking
Oh,
with a friend
okay.
because I live in Swindon, so I'm right on the edge of the Cotswolds. So I have a few friends that train at the gym that I train at that have horses and stuff. So I go riding with them.
Yes. We've got a
It's a
few
beautiful thing.
comments in.
It's a wonderful way to relax.
Lots of admiration and respect for you. Admiration for your courage, says Celia. Yes, absolutely. Anne says, Anne salutes you. We're fortunate that you decided to join us in Britain and Swindon. Do you go back to Barbados a lot, or is your family there?
I went back this year for the first time in 6 years.
Oh my goodness.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
And you were part in your sport thing in the Invictus Games, but you spent some time with Harry, didn't you? Prince Harry.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, is he being unfairly treated?
Unfairly treated. What do you mean?
Or I'll put it, is he a nice bloke? Is he a good guy to have beside you on the sports ground?
I'd go to war with him.
You would?
Yes.
You go to war with him?
Yeah. I think personally, my opinion on it is that he has the right to live the way he wants to live. And it's very easy for people to say X, Y, or Z thing or cast judgments or whatever the case might be, but we're not walking in his shoes. And I'm looking at it from a soldiering perspective. He's made a lot of sacrifices for us as veterans. I think he's earned the right to live the way he wants to live. My opinion.
And you and he got on well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an uplifting thing. Corrie, can you wait for a second whilst I tell people what shows we have coming up? Then I want to come back to you. In fact, there's a question I want to ask you whilst I'm doing that, because on Thursday, live at the Riverstone Theatre in Fulham and on Zoom, of course, we have the brilliant psychiatrist, Dr. Ben Cave, and his new book is What We Fear Most. If any of you are in London or want to come to London for a great show there, email concierge@goldster.co.uk and ask Ben whatever it is that gives you anxiety and what you fear most. And I was talking to Ben just before I talked to you, Corrie, and he asked me to ask you a question. Do we not tell people how bad war actually is? And the consequence, do we glorify it too much?
Glorify it. I think we take lessons from past generations. I think when I came in, there were people who had been to Iraq in 91, all the way up to this point, up to the Afghan War. And you hear, you sit down and you have, sorry about that, you sit down and you have conversations with people about what to expect and different things. But in terms of glorifying or being prepared for it, you're told what the region is like and what to kind of expect and what the ground is like and what that type of stuff. In terms of psychologically, I think that's something that you have to do on your own. And it's not something you should do if you're apprehensive or scared.
That's a very interesting answer. And thank you for that. I will tell Ben, we will send that clip to Ben, and he can. And yes, as I said, what we fear most, Ben Cave. That's on Thursday, and we're expanding our Riverstone audience partnership. We have Emma Byrne, September the 12th at Riverstone, Rory Cullen-Jones with the Parkinson's, former BBC technology correspondent, October the 5th, the great Bonnie Greer, playwright, novelist, November the 16th, and our very own Andy Yao, Tai Chi in the Flesh, December the 14th. And then on December the 7th, we're having a live show to which Goldster members are invited at the Art Alive studio in Regent Street, central London. It's going to be a fantastic event where Goldster members can join in an art class with the students of the artist Lanre Olagake, who will also be my guest. And I think Bonnie Greer is going to be there as well. September the 5th, I am with Alexander Scrimger, who was trained under the very best mentors in Vietnam on his book, Facial Reflexology for Emotional Well-Being. September the 7th, the brilliant Second World War historian Roger Morehouse returns to Goldster with his new book, The Forgers. That's a Second World War operation that saved thousands of Jewish lives by smuggling in forged documents so that they could escape from Nazi Germany. Corrie, you have given us a fantastic, moving story. I want, just before we finish, for you to give some advice to anybody who's had a remarkable change of life like you have, or has just had, an accident, retired, found a vacuum, that sort of thing. What should they do? How should they process it?
That is a great question. I think the first advice I would give is that we're all individual people, and we handle pressure in different ways. We handle adversity in different ways. But the one thing that I've always lived by is not to allow any form of adversity to change the person that I am or to define the person that I want to be. I think a lot of times we spend a lot of time focusing on the negative and on what has been or what could have been, what should have been, rather than what is. And I tend to focus now on what is. Like, I have beautiful kids, I have a wonderful family, I have so much to be grateful and thankful for. And those are the first things that I give thanks for. I live in a great country, a wonderful country with great customs and rich history. And those are the things that I tend to focus on. But in terms of my personal journey, I always say to myself, I am never ever going to be defined by what happened to me in Afghanistan. I am going to be defined by my actions after that and the person that I want to be going forward. In the end, for me, it's about legacy. And I want my daughters to look at me and see a man that didn't give up when he hit a wall or when he had some form of adversity. I want them to look at me and see a man that got up, dusted himself off, and kept moving forward. So that if I can give any advice is, don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on anything. And the only person that can stop you from being successful or stop you from being the person that you want to become is yourself. And the only way to fail is never to start.
Thank you so much for that thought. That's a great thought. When is your next bobsleigh championship?
I fly to Norway in November, hopefully.
November, that's it. November. Corrie Mapp, bobsleigh, bobsleigh champion. Thank you so much. Times Wing Chariot is attacking us. But thank you for joining, all of you, for joining Corrie Mapp for this Goldster conversation. Purpose, passion, and grit. My goodness, have we not heard that? A lot of the audience are coming in now with comments like that. Celia, thank you for the UK insightful and moving session. My hat off to you, Corrie, for your grit and determination, says Denise. Until Thursday, in person and on Zoom with psychiatrist Dr. Ben Cave and his book, What We Fear Most. Stay active, stay curious, stay involved, stay safe. And of course, stay Goldster. Tell your friends, families, and enemies about our Goldster conversation, particularly this one. Thank you so much for the great Corrie Mapp for giving us such an inspirational, uplifting, and thoughtful story. You have been the most fantastic guest. Corrie Mapp, everyone. Goodbye, Corrie, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.